Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we're back, and it is a very special day for me and my very, very pretty and cute wife. Today is our 30th wedding anniversary.
That's right, September 15th.
Some of you don't know, and I realize some of you don't care, but Julie and I have been married for 30 years today.
Yes.
And we met, I'm 51 and Julie is, I'm not allowed to say her age.
Slightly
Slightly younger. She's 35 forever. But we met when we were in high school, and she was a sophomore and I was a junior. You guys can now do your math and figure out her age.
Yep.
And we got married basically, well, we were right out of college in essence, but we got engaged while we were still in college. And Julie has a list of all the businesses, because real estate coaching and what we've done prior to what you guys know us for, it was not the first business that we, we built and sold. So Julie's actually created we believe in numbers and we believe in accountability. So we have an accountability report for you guys of all the things we've done, mostly professionally, in the last 30 years. And oh my gosh, 30 years really does seem like a long time.
We were just talking about this. Some of this we had kind of not really forgotten about, but it's been a while. So let's see, starting with the detailing business, which I think we kind of started in high school, but certainly were in it during much of college.
So let me edit that. So when we were in high school, what we would do on Friday and Saturday night we created a little flyer that was a little advertisement, and Julie and I would go to all the nice restaurants in town and not go to eat, but go to basically flyer the nice cars that were in the parking lot.
Oh, you mean like proactive lead generation?
Yeah, we were proactively lead generating. So we knew where all the nice restaurants were, and we did this very, very, very consistently, even when it was cold out, which we were from Columbus, Ohio, so that was often. And we put flyers on their cars, and we were very strategic on what cars we'd flyer, because we quickly figured out that if we were putting a flyer on a nice Mercedes, chances are they had one or two other nice Mercedes or what have you.
You were right about that.
And we were, so we would go into a big parking lot, and we just look for the nice cars. We'd flyer the nice cars. And lo and behold, we started getting calls from a lot of doctors, a lot of business owners, and they would certainly share our names. And we built a very, very profitable car cleaning and detailing business. It was called the Auto Spa, and we built that when we were in high school. And then I took a year off of it when I went away to Ashland University, and then I came back and we restarted that business. And that business grew while we were still in college to over $100,000 a year. And we ended up having a staff of 3 people. But when we got into real estate, and Julie's going to tell you about our next business, we got into real estate, we didn't have anyone to buy the business, and we didn't want to continue to run the business. So we ended up giving the business away to one of our biggest competitors. And then we were able to, in some cases, have some of those real estate clients some of those car cleaning and detailing clients became real estate clients. One business led to the other.
Yes, and as such, eventually that led to real estate. And some of our first real estate clients were actually car cleaning and detailing business clients because we sent them letters of introduction, proactive lead generation, and called and prospected. And some of our first transactions were with those folks. And because we were in real estate, of course, that led to the rental properties, the property management, which many of those, those we still own.
We bought our first investment property when we were 22 and 23 while we were still in college. We may or may not have used some student loan money for that. I don't remember. And, that's one of the only properties we ever bought that we sold that we should have kept, because that would have been an incredible long-term investment. But that property business, then we got into residential real estate. It wasn't that long after buying our first property that we realized that we wanted to get in the real estate industry. And ironically, one of our car cleaning and detailing customers was the one that suggested that we get real estate licenses.
Yes, indeed. And that led to Powerhouse, which was an interesting experiment.
Well, so we were given the opportunity to be founding members of a YPO chapter in Columbus, Ohio. So our real estate business was going really well. We had, sold 100 houses our first year. This is again when we were early 20s. We are on. This is back before the internet, guys. This was back basically in the early to mid 90s. And at that point, we had a lot of national attention, and we were sort of becoming local celebrities in Columbus, Ohio. for having accomplished what we did. And we are invited to be founding members of this new chapter of the YEO YPO, which if you guys don't know what that is, it's a very, very prestigious, especially YPO is a very prestigious invite-only organization. And YEO stood for Young Entrepreneurs Organization. And we helped to launch that, and that is still in force today.
Yes, indeed. And of course, then we got into coaching.
Powerhouse.
Powerhouse, yes.
Yep. So through the YEO contacts, we were able to then start a national real estate company. And you guys will think I'm going ahead of my skis, but this is what happened. We had in contract 30 of the largest, most profitable real estate teams, and they were all going to basically be under this brokerage that we were going to start. Very similar to the Compass model, basically, is what we were doing. Basically the same. And we had already had it all set up. We had all these teams that had signed on to agreements to be part of this new brand called Powerhouse. We were going to provide the tech infrastructure and the brokerage infrastructure. We were getting licensed in all the states in which they were located. And we had lined up all kinds of different funding rounds. And one of the last funding rounds we had was going to value the company somewhere between $75 and $100 million, which at the time when Julie and I were still in our 20s, that would have given us a net worth of over $50 million based on our equity in the brand, which was pretty awesome. What's pretty exciting today.
Yeah.
And so we had the first round, the second round all lined up. The second round was they signed their deal documents. Their money was, and we had a board of directors. We had a team of people working for us. We had lease space. We had a lot of this fixed cost, and the company itself was still in the formidable stages, so it wasn't producing any revenue. So we actually had another round of financing set up that was a huge round of financing, and after that, we would have gone public. But as the people were about to sign their agreements to basically provide us for, I think it was like $15 million, and this was again back in the 90s, they backed out because the tech bubble blew up, and all their investments that were tied to the success of investments they had done for other startups all basically evaporated inside 48 hours.
So it was exciting while it lasted, and then a little bit of bad timing. But I think that gave, I remember all of those meetings, and I think that was a really good experience business-wise and training and how all of that stuff works, and certainly great connections.
And we still kept, obviously our real estate business kept humming along. We sold between 100 and 200 houses a year for about 10 years. And then what happened is by accident, our coaching business took off. And we were at a Howard Britton conference. Howard was thinking about offering coaching. Howard mentioned from stage that he wanted to start a coaching program. And I'll never forget this. He said, at break, I want anyone who's interested in talking with me about coaching to come up and throw your card on the stage, and we'll collect them and we'll give you a call. And I don't know how many people were in the audience. I remember being like a couple thousand. It may not have been that number, but I do remember essentially every single human was throwing a business card on the stage. It was a mob scene. And Julie and I were in the back of the room and seeing this happen and realized what we were watching as transformative something that was happening in the real estate industry.
I think you could actually see the light bulbs go off over our heads.
Yeah, and we started having people start asking us, like, we didn't even know what the hell coaching was, right? This is a true story. This was 1998, basically.
No, but we had written our 0 to 10 million in 1 year book.
Yeah, we had written a book, and it's no longer published. And so Remax had us go on a national tour after our first year. We were meeting with different offices and brokerages and whatnot. We wrote a book. And the book was basically a massive 3-ring binder. It wasn't a book like you'd think. But anyway, so yeah, we had a whole bunch of people come up and ask us if we could be their coach at this event. And some of those people that came up and asked us are still coaching clients, if you can believe that. That's Michael true. And Robin Gordon, and there's some other people that are still in our orbit that were coaching clients from all the way back in the late 90s. And I remember the first client we took on, I didn't know. I mean, I was their coach, and I didn't know what the heck I was supposed to do. But they liked whatever we were doing.
That's right.
Because they stayed with us.
And we had a lot of content to work with from having done the 0 to 10 million stuff. And of course, eventually coaching led us to podcasting. It started with the daily motivational message we used to send out, and then that became podcasting.
So the real estate business we sold, and then when we had the opportunity to expand, so the coaching business started to take off. It got to the point where we had to make a choice because it's really difficult to be good at two things. You could be mediocre at two things, but not great at two things. And so we had to choose one, and we chose coaching, and thank God we did, frankly. Mm-hmm. And that led us to the opportunity to choose in the country where we wanted to live, and we chose someplace with no snow.
Yes, several times.
So we saw several times.
Including where we live now.
In Puerto Rico. So we sold the real estate business, and then we moved. And from there, the coaching business really went to the next level. And for a while, Julie and I did work for another coaching organization for about 4 years. And then we restarted our coaching organization in 2007. And since then, we've written books. We've become the #1 daily podcasters. Yes. We've had all this other success. So the question I have for you As we've done all that, and we, Zoe's come into our lives.
Yes.
We've moved personally how many times?
Oh, I don't know. I think I've counted like 15. And we figured out that we have lived through at least 4 recessions, 2 significant real estate booms, a significant, of course, real estate crash, and of course, this crazy time that we live in now. And then all of that has led also to EXP, all of our friends there. And collectively, you and I have done we stopped counting like 5 years ago when we were at 100,000 coaching calls apiece. So I don't even know how many it is. But, and of course, our most recent 60-day U.S. tour of the country, where we met with lots of coaching clients and, of course, family and lots of fun things along the way, at 22 states. And as you mentioned, 1 kid, plus your mom.
Plus my mom. Yeah. And now we're living in Puerto Rico at the Ritz-Carlton. Yeah. And what's really, I think, especially interesting about our past 30 years together, which I didn't necessarily appreciate then, but I appreciate now. And I told you this yesterday or the day before when we were going on a walk, is that when we were in high school, we read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yes.
And I remember, Think and Grow Rich gave us some and frankly, we're listening to a lot of Dr. Laura, right? Mm-hmm. And so we had some founding principles, some real bedrock, rules to follow that we were going to govern our lives by, and we never deviated. And I remember there are several specific ones with regards to Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill that had we not read that book, or had not read that book many, many times, which we ended up doing, because every time you read it, you get something new because you're just maybe not ready for the lesson that you're supposed to be learning.
Yeah, when you read it in your 20s, it's completely different than even 5 years after that.
But there's certain value sets that came from not just the book, but our life last 30 years together. And you and I started to think about what those were. And I'll tell you, one of the first things, guys, is, and let's make this somewhat personal, right? Because we're talking about our anniversary. Yep. I'll tell you something. People ask us all the time, how you guys been able to form, your real estate business, your coaching company together. At this time, it's just muscle memory for Julie and I, because we've done it so many times. Mm-hmm. When we enter into a business opportunity, at this point, we just basically are asset managers. We manage the assets, which are different businesses. And right now, we have 7 different businesses. And for the most part, we're proactively involved in all of them, but it's not as if we're working in them.
They've been developed.
We manage the managers at this point, or we oversee things. We looked at the KPIs every day, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things we've learned from doing that is the multiple spokes rule. And one of the rules we set for ourselves when we first got married was we wanted to have 7 different income spokes that were not necessarily overly dependent on each other. And the benefit of doing that was not only, now, the spokes that we started out creating would have been obviously real estate sales and the investment properties, and we were doing some other things to try to create income sources. But one of the things, and that is not in conflict with do one thing well, you can't do 2 things well, because what the one thing well we did when we sold real estate was selling real estate. We sold between 100 and 200 homes per year for almost 10 years, right? We sold 100 houses our first year. And then we pivoted and we got into coaching. We wanted to become the best at that. When we got into other things, we wanted to be the best at doing that. But one of the founding principles, not only was multiple spokes, was always run your business with profit first.
Absolutely.
And that's the hardest thing to do, and that's the one thing that's not being taught that's going to result in just tons of real estate roadkill, especially if the market starts to shift.
Yeah, and I think that one of the principles that we coach our coaching clients on is to be very serious and, develop one spoke well before you add another one.
Yep.
And so, we didn't just go doing, different things while we were building the real estate practice. I mean, I think a little bit of the rental properties, but that went hand in hand.
Yep. That's passive for the most part.
Pretty passive. So, yes. And then to keep what already is working for you, in our case, the real estate, sales, while we were developing coaching, to not abandon a spoke, it should be in addition to, not instead of.
Right. And so if someone asks me, how did you guys do it? I don't think they're really looking for an answer, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But what they're asking really is, how have we been able to go from what seems like one success to the next? And I'll give you the answer to that one, is because we've never expected anything other than one success to the next. And I know that sounds like a little bit of a mental Rubik's Cube, but let me make it simpler for you. Why is it that people think that you have to have essentially highs and lows in your life? It's almost like in this American sort of entrepreneurial zeitgeist that when you watch some sort of, motivation video, people always start out by talking about how they were doing really great, and all of a sudden, basically, they're living in a shit show and lost it all. Why is it that seems to be almost the expected norm, where that's voluntary? And that's one of the things that Julie and I realized early on, is that we did not have to go from feast to famine, or from emotional highs to emotional lows, or from marital, things working great in our marriage to basically things not working great in our marriage. We realize that by having let's just make this personal. When you're married for this long and longer, the nature of your relationship changes. It ebbs and flows. It comes and goes. The nature of, for example, just keeping it real. Like when you first get married, obviously, it's a lot of passion. It's a lot of sex. It's a lot of things like that.
Even before you're married.
Yeah. Well, not
in our case.
Not in our case, right. But so then basically as you progress, maybe then you have kids and then the priority changes to the kids, or maybe you decide to focus on business. But as long as you've got the idea that you're in it for the long haul, as long as you got the goal or the expectation that sometimes like the intensity of a relationship or the intensity of business success or the intensity of how much passion you're feeling in life, it doesn't always have to be at a high point, because a lot of what essentially kills potential is people's unwillingness to, and this sounds a little harsh, but it's true, to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level in business, in some cases in your personal life.
Yes, but I think that comes down to another founding principle, whether we knew it or not, but that was having common goals and really talking about going in the same direction.
And not quitting too soon. We're fire hosing them, but really these things are all true. We really do need to condense it.
These are our thoughts from 30 years.
Exactly. But we need to condense this into a list.
Sure.
But what I was saying in essence is that quitting too soon is the killer of all things, right? Mm-hmm. And so like if you get married and you are bouncing off the walls and all you want to do is just be with your spouse, and it's just it looks like some sort of 1980s, thing with Meg Ryan and what's his name? Tom Hanks, right? So it's constant, oh my gosh, whatever. If that's your expectation for how your marriage is going to be, you won't stay married. It just doesn't work like that, because life doesn't operate like that. Life's going to hand you sometimes months and years worth of hardship that you're going to have to work through. But it's from the hardships of working through that you build something that's truly extraordinary. And that's, again, keeping this practical for the sake of you guys who are listening, for the sake of building your real estate businesses. That's especially true when it comes to, now, here's an interesting paradox to that, or I think maybe a way of looking at it from another perspective. Another mistake that people often will make is they stay on the wrong path for too long. And unfortunately, I think that sometimes, and we've seen this with some of our friends, when their marriages start to fray, it's because they didn't do what Julie just said, have common goals. You can have individual goals, but if your individual goals outnumber your communal family goals, you're screwed, straight up. Because you're no longer
in conflict. You have built-in conflict.
Right. You have to, again, it's hard to do more than one thing well, right? So when Julie and I'm looking at our board right now. We have personal goals, we have Harris coaching goals, and we have Libertas goals. And so when we write all these goals down, I'll write a goal down, and then Julie and I will talk about it. And if she's not in alignment with whatever that goal is, if I can't sell her something, basically, then we're not going to do it, because she's not going to be partners with me in accomplishing that goal. And we can replace that with something else. But sometimes, like when we see some, though it's not something I run into commonly here, to be honest with you. It seems like a lot of the couples here are on the same page. But in general, in life, if you see a couple,
we've seen it in coaching clients.
For sure. Yeah. But if you see a couple that are not pulling in the same direction, they're starting to pull apart because he has his goals, she has her goals. That's no longer really a marriage in the traditional sense. That's more of a partnership. And then, you're going to run into all kinds of different sorts of challenges, that way, with having a marriage that's not really trying to work together as a true, what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, and I think it's exacerbated because this comes up a lot too. When you are trying to nurture your marriage and also running businesses together.
Or in raising a family. Doing all those things together is a real pain in the ass. It's true.
All going the right direction.
Yeah.
And then you've got to accept the fact that you're going to have ups and downs in all of those categories, sometimes all at once, which is when you feel the most stress. But I think
you won't make it through unless you've basically done the work to begin. Right?
And I think the belief that you will make it through.
Right.
Instead of, we'll see how it goes.
It's the belief that, for example, it's easy to look at somebody who is successful and say, but not taking into account the literal decades that went up to the point that it took for them to be where you're kind of seeing
experience.
You're seeing the present version of them, but you did not see the rough and tumble kind of sketch version of them, 20 years ago.
The bits and pieces that have added up to make them who they are now.
Right, and so they stayed the course. They didn't give up. They stayed true to their commitments.
Sure.
And
I do think
they didn't have the expectation that it was going to be a short-term effort.
Right. So they had the expectation that there would be, rocky roads at times, ups and downs. But I think that that by itself isn't necessarily enough. You have to have the belief that it will work out because you will make it work out because you have control of things going your way instead of feeling like something else is always controlling you. I think you and Steve Powers actually touched on this on the interview a little bit, where you were talking about, or maybe one of you guys said that you have to be all in. You can't be trying it out. You can't be dabbling because the business will eat you up and spit you out.
But we're kind of intermixing personal relationship advice.
But it is intermixed.
It is totally the same, because what makes for a strong marriage, what makes for a strong business, they're kind of the same principles. They're kind of
it's a similar mindset. That being more abundance and less scarcity, being more positive and I've got a podcast I'm working on about positivity. And, that sounds very woo-woo, but actually things that have been studied about people who, as you say, generally believe that tomorrow will be better than today. I think that applies in business and personal and everything that you do. And it is intermixed. And, people that try to separate business and personal when you're in real estate, I think that's very frustrating and creates a lot of stress versus accepting that, sometimes you're going to be wanting to watch your kid's ballet class and you're going to look at your text and somebody's got a contract coming. That is a fact of life, and accepting that and having enough business sense and enough flexibility and enough, of the right kinds of motivation because you have similar goals, that will work out for you, and figuring out that balance. Even though I'm not a big fan of the word balance, there is some balance to being able to deal with all of those spinning plates.
There's a sense
and not lose your mind.
Replace balance with sense of confidence that's coming from you've had enough experiences to know that it'll actually work out.
Confidence in yourself.
And confidence in yourself, right? I mean, you don't have to have all the answers going in because you know that the future version of you is going to be able to figure it out once you get there.
Yes. Well, and there's been books written about that when people feel stress or fear, it's not because of the thing that they think it is. It's a fear of not being able to handle something. So if you change that into, I can handle this. I'm a doer. I do things now. I get things done. I can handle this. I will figure it out. I will persevere. And having that confidence, even when you don't feel confident, which is, the challenge of it all.
But it really does come down to not just experience, but if you don't have the experience, then you have to supplement the experience with the training and with the education. Because if you, for example, Julie and I just got back from this 8,000-mile sojourn around the country, right? We use GPS every step of the way. That's all a coaching and training program is at the end of the day.
Yes, but you have to trust the GPS.
Yeah, you have to trust. Exactly. Well, you not only have to trust the GPS. There's a weird number of people out there that actually would go out and drive around the country without using GPS and thinking magically somehow they're going to manifest their arrival on time. I mean, it doesn't work out like that. And even if you do have some sort of strange spidey sense of direction and timing, why would you put yourself through the added stress if you could just follow what the GPS told you?
Yeah, I mean, there are roads that actually just end. And we found some of them. Yeah. And there's roads that, it's fine and good, and then it turns into gravel.
Remember we were driving on the road up to see Glenn, the CEO, founder, really, not
Blaine,
CEO. Blaine. It was basically literally on the edge of the United States and Canada. And we were driving on this road, and all of a sudden, Julie was telling me we need to turn left, and I was sort of kind of listening. And then she said, stop! And then
we were actually talking to Brandon, somebody.
Had I not stopped,
yeah,
that's right, we were on the phone. Had I not stopped, we would have been on a bridge within maybe 5 car lengths. That once on that bridge, it was the bridge to Canada. In order for us we couldn't turn around once on the bridge. We had to have gone straight in Canada and then somehow basically figured out a way to come back in. And there were COVID restrictions that were preventing people
once you're in, you're not getting out.
That's right. So we would have basically been spending some time in Canada.
Would have been longer than 60 days,
I imagine. But that's
but the point is, okay, we were going north. We were going towards Blaine. We had a pin from Glenn. But you can't just go on autopilot and expect it's all going to work out. You could have been marooned in Canada had you missed one exit.
Yeah.
So that's my point in you kind of have to trust nav once you know that your nav is working, and choose well. I think I chose well with you.
Yeah, likewise.
The same. And I think having that faith at the end of the day.
Yeah, and again, guys, I wanted to keep this practical and tactical, and not have it be a big emotional mess. Something Julie and I are always going to reserve for ourselves. Sorry, we're not going to overly share in that category ever. But the reality of it is that the bedrock for our long-term success, obviously, is our love and faith in each other. And the nature of the love and faith has changed and it's evolved. But the only way I can tell you with 100% confidence that it gets better the longer you're married in most cases is because we've been married for 30 years. Mm-hmm. Had you been with us for our first 5 years when we were figuring things out, I wouldn't have been so confident, and you would have looked at us saying, like, why the hell did you guys get married so young? We had people saying to us, what were you thinking? Exactly. But we stayed true, and we stayed true to each other, and we stayed true to our common goals. The common goals thing, if there's one takeaway, if you were to ask me how do you stay married for 30 years, that would be 100% what it was. Did you see the Kristen, Ziggy?
Yeah.
She sent a picture of 2 thermometers that she has in her refrigerator.
I loved that.
That was perfect. And
visual accountability.
Just to describe it.
Okay, so I think one was GCI, and I think one was volume. And
no, one was GCI, and one was income from revenue share.
Oh, that's right. The other one was EXP. So imagine thermometers where, like when they do blood drives, they color that in to see how much they've raised and that kind of thing. Right. So it was that kind of thing, only for her. Part of it was a real estate thermometer, and the other one was the EXP thermometer, and she was coloring it in. She had benchmarks. She had goals built in, and I think it's on her refrigerator.
It was. She had two. She had 2 large scales, probably 3 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper taped together. Yeah. Coaching members, it's on the Tim and Julie Harris coaching private Facebook page. You can see this
Harris
image.
Rules too.
The Harris Rules. Yeah, it was awesome. Anyway, so you look at it, and it was on one side was the real estate transactions. It was the number of units that she was going to do to accomplish her goal, and then it was also when she had a closing, she wrote down the dollar amount, and her goal. I read at the bottom of her thermometer was buy lake house or beach house. That was one of them.
And that was right there in her kitchen in front of everybody, so everyone could invest in it.
And she has 2 kids.
Yes, and so here's the thing. That was a result of Ziggy not just listening to the podcast about fourth quarter that we did last week, but implementing what she heard.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's a great example of somebody who is coachable, paying attention, participating, has similar goals.
Well, that right there. But not only there, she and her wife and her 2 kids basically have every single day when they look at the refrigerator, they have these 2 barometers that Ziggy is visually holding herself accountable to for herself and for the rest of her family. And she's tracking. And it's specific, no drill down, Tim and Julie Harris style, no bullshit. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And this is what's going to come as a result. That is how you actually have clarity of thinking. That's a way, not just to say successful in business, but in your personal life, it's visual accountability.
And there was a little detail that not too many caught on that. On her GCI chart, she had crossed out the G for gross commission income and wrote in net.
Oh, good. I didn't see that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, that really tells you something. So, yes, I think we need to round the bend so you can get on a call or something.
I'm already late. Okay. But here's another thing. Our other business, which we didn't mention, was our media syndication business. This podcast and our book, Harris Rules. If you've not yet read our book, Harris Rules, you're probably one of the 3 agents in the country that haven't. No, I'm kidding. But you can get Harris Rules at Barnes & Noble and every major bookseller. But do consider just getting it on Amazon. Get the Audible version. I'm sorry we did not read it. Frankly, we didn't really want to read it.
I think the person that did a killer job.
He did. And so go ahead and listen to the book. And that's going to give you that sense of direction. That's going to give you that GPS, those GPS coordinates. And guys, look, working with your spouse is not for everyone. That's true. But when you can work with your spouse formally like we have forever, that's great. But if you can't, or if that just isn't what is a good fit for both people, then the other way to do it is do copy what Ziggy's done and work with your spouse on the overarching familial goals of what you're all trying to pull for. So Ziggy's real estate goals were then interconnected with the betterment of her family and the betterment of their lives long term. You guys see how you can do it? So there's the working in your business together, which is what we've done, but there's also the familial business, because a well-run family is basically run like a business. And so if you really want to know how to decode, how to basically have long-term, ever-increasing levels of success, The first thing, not the only thing, but definitely the first thing, is to have shared goals. And if you guys want to ask us how we've done it for 30 years and how we've, essentially basically gotten where we've gotten financially, how we've done what we've done, I promise you that is step number one. And after that, there's a lot of other things we've talked about on the podcast. There's all kinds of other head work you got to do. Then you got to work on your skill set. But rule number one is if you're in a relationship and you want that relationship to last, whether that relationship was with you being partners with somebody and that's the relationship, whether it's partners and you're married to the person, whether it's just partners and you guys get the gist. The shared goals thing is critical. And keeping yourself on the track of having those shared goals for long periods of time is incredibly rewarding. Because when you have two people, let alone multiple people that are working towards the same goals, you will blaze through those goals lists so fast you'll realize you're not thinking big enough.
Which is the other thing. Update your goals all the time.
All the time.
We've had coaching clients that are like, I accomplished everything on my goals list. Woo, that's awesome.
When? 1977?
Right. Let's kind of, update things, replace things as you achieve them. And again, involve all of your family and your spouse or partners, et cetera. So I think that when you boil it down, that's the North Star. And everything, when you've done the work on
there
that.
There are other things, though. Obviously,
but things will fall in place when you have the common.
Having a religious underpinning to your relationship definitely matters. I would say, and again, there's lots of other things if you guys are interested, we can talk about. Just email me if you want us to share with you guys more of these things we picked up along the way. Or I'm sorry, just text me.
We're going to make a little podcast.
You can just text me 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206 if you want us to talk more about this stuff. But there's certain things you're going to have to do. Again, if you guys want us to make it personal, like as far as taking care of yourselves, your physical appearance to your spouse, your mental ever-increasing levels of aptitude. Because then if you stop learning and you sort of become a boring person to your spouse,
don't be complacent.
You have to. Your job is to be ever improving for yourself, but also because you made a commitment to your spouse, and we're married, right? So my job is to keep myself frosty in all categories that matter. But I'm doing it for me, but I'm also doing it for Julie, and I'm doing it for our family, and I'm doing it for all of you. And so there is no done. There's always evolving. There is no complacency. That's a fake word, because if you become complacent, you lose what you have, really, at the end of the day. So let us know, guys. And Julie and I are going to run short on the podcast today because it is our anniversary. We're giving ourselves a break.
That's right.
So, sweetie, I love you.
I love you
Come
too.
here and give you a kiss.
There we go.
Happy anniversary. Yep. Let's see. Is Zoe going to give us an anniversary present?
We'll see.
Yeah. Hopefully it's just getting her homework done without trying to kill us
kid.
tonight. All right. You guys have a great day. And thank you for bearing with us as we bear our 30-year anniversary secrets to you. And again, if you want us to talk more about personal stuff, just text us. Otherwise, we're getting back to core real estate training tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.